All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Joe Campbell, for joining me here today. You're from Culture City. Really appreciate your being here. I would just love for you to start with, a little bit about your company and how you got started.
Sound? Yeah, well, I run a company called Culture City. We're based in the Lava Building in Liverpool. We started off way back in 2013 when I joined John Moores University to study film and media, and very quickly realised that we weren't going to be doing much filming. So myself and a few colleagues on the course ended up setting up a company at that point called Culture City Television, so CCTV. We interviewed bands, artists, musicians, theatre companies, given free promotion and also gaining skills in what we do. After that, we then got poached a little bit by the Anfield Rap to do a year with them where they set up a new magazine. So we interviewed everyone from players to Liverpool players to Russell Brand, to John Barnes, a little bit of everyone. Anything that was interesting really for that audience. Then we started doing documentaries. We did some stuff with Boy George, Lamont Dozier, and now we're at a point where we've been very lucky in the last few years to do a lot of corporate stuff. So we work with the likes of Nike and Adidas. We've done some work with them. We've just released a book this week for the first time, which we published. And we're working on our first 90-minute documentary on a local musician, but I can't say who.
That sounds like you have a super varied history.
Yes.
And wow, I mean, all of that coming from a couple of guys just coming together. And so what was your passions? Like, what kind of started it? Was it for music? Was it for that whole genre of things? Or what really kicked it off for you personally?
For me, it was literally that I was more annoyed at the fact that I wasn't going to be gaining the skills that I wanted to gain. So the actual content at that point wasn't massively important. I mean, a lot of my friends are in bands and have been in bands, and we've worked with them over the years. And it made sense to go down the music route. But then it just so happened that the first artist we interviewed was a guy called Brian Nash, who was in Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the guitarist out of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And he had a book out called Nash Says Relax. So it made sense to basically interview him about that subject. And then we also interviewed an artist that I knew quite well who just won a music award. So it was like an up and coming artist and an art. No offense, Nasha, if you're watching, maybe an artist who's already made it and it maybe past it. I wouldn't say that, but maybe that's what it was. So we had both sides of the coin there. Where it was like the up and coming ones and then the older generation of artists. So, and after that, we actually had the first week when we launched, we had about 500 bands get in touch saying they wanted to work with us. So that was a year of doing that sort of content. And then, like I say, after that point, we then finally got someone to come to us and say, we really like what you're doing. Do you want to carry on doing what you're doing and get paid for it? So it was a no-brainer, really.
I mean, brilliant. That's just perfect in terms of like when your personal passions and interests mixed with the way to make a lot of money. It's brilliant. In terms of the challenges that you've experienced, like making this into a business and kind of making it work for you guys, what are some of the hardest things that you've come across?
I've been asked this a few times, and it's always really simple stuff. Like, for example, when you go to like study film or go to a media college or whatever it is, no one tells you this stuff about running a business. So the things that I found quite difficult, not difficult, but just things that I needed to really like address. And it's if someone was going to set out to do this like I've done it, then you probably should know these things at first. So things like VAT, becoming VAT registered, like basically putting two pots. Anytime you get your VAT money, put it in a separate pot. Don't get caught up into those terrible situations where you have no money left and then the VAT man comes knocking. Those sort of stuff was really like something that I didn't even know about. But luckily we had some good mentors when it comes down to stuff like that. And then other stuff like we were a very young company, so I think there'd be times when we'd be interviewing someone, either someone really famous or someone really influential or someone really important, or going into a big meeting, and when you're 18, they don't necessarily take you that seriously. We had one once where we were doing a job for a big science company, and it was a really well paid project, and we were the best people. We won it. We definitely should have won it, but we turned up in my mate's car. My mate had a Mini Cooper, an old battered Mini Cooper, and we had all the equipment in the back. We didn't have a van, and I remember the client basically looking at us and saying something along the lines of, "You mustn't be very good." And then we obviously did the job, did it really, really well, and better than the people they normally use. And I think on the second meeting, they actually basically apologized to us. But stuff like that was an interesting one that no one really told me would happen. So I suppose that's probably something we've overcome, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I do feel that people have a way of jumping to conclusions or making impressions of you without really knowing the full story. And I'm interested to hear kind of your experience throughout the pandemic, because obviously it affected different businesses differently. But how was it for you guys?
Oh, so we had so what I can tell you honestly exactly what happened. So we had, our previous office was in Man Island, and we had like this really nice, expensive office. We were there for 3 years, and before the pandemic, we were looking at growing. We wanted to bring more staff in. We were in a bit of a position where the equipment was piling up around us, and it was getting a little bit too much. And we decided we were going to move to a new location. At that point, we'd again kind of been poached by another company where they'd said, what you've done in Man Island in that building, we were really, really lucky where we started off with as one of the first tenants in that building. And then every time someone came in, they then we'd basically be their content creators, because we made mates with them. We'd see them in the bar on a Friday night, tell them what we did, all that sort of stuff. And then it became a thing where a little bit of an ecosystem where we were in the middle, and then we worked with all these people, these businesses around us. So basically another company came to us and said, why don't you try and do what you've done, but do it in the biggest, most important building in the city, which is obviously the Liver building. So we thought about it and thought, we can get a bigger space and we can target bigger businesses. And then if we can get them on retainers and we can work with them, we're going to be in a great position. So we signed up to 2 office spaces. We kept the other one and this one. And then 2 days after signing, we got told that there was going to be a lockdown. And at that point, we had £8,000 a month in retainers, and every single one of them stopped. So that was a bit of a nightmare. And I was like, we've got these 2 offices, nobody in them. We didn't even have carpet in one of them. And I was like, we can't even afford carpet. What's going on? So that was interesting. But we got through it. And then it's something I always say to people about lockdown was, the last job we did before lockdown was for Nike. And then the first one back was for Nike. And in between the whole of lockdown, we did one job, and it was for a toilet company. So it kind of says how far we'd sunk at that point. But yeah, it was very, very, very difficult. But it gave us it was a really weird situation where, and I'd never want to go back into it again, but there was an element where it probably at the point we were at in our career, it was a terrible time for it to happen, but also a reasonably good time. So it gave us an opportunity to diversify. At that point, we had a few major clients who kept us going, and obviously they all stopped. Whereas since then, we still have those clients and we got new clients, but also we spread ourselves thin differently. So for example, the documentary that we're working on, the 90-minute piece, that's a 12-month project. So if at any point during that 12 months something happened, we'd still be working on that. The same with the book that we've just published. That was something totally random, something we never thought we'd do. But then we've done it. It's worked out really well. Within 3 hours, we recouped pretty much all the costs and everything of it being on sale. So that was amazing. And now we've got like 900 copies of a book that we're really proud of. So we've changed how we operate. And this idea of being a content creation house, we were always that, but we were always focused heavily on film. Now the fact that we can do a lot more than that, and also just stuff like we invested heavily in different things during the lockdown. So when we did get money coming in, instead of spending on what we'd normally spend on, a perfect example is we bought a podcast studio, a really expensive podcast studio, but made sure that we could socially distance with that podcast studio. So instead of like extensions on XLR leads, just technical things that made it. And then also the other thing was we made it very specific that we could fit it all into one bag. So the idea is that for clients that we've always worked with, people who want regular content, we came in and said, you might want to do a podcast. Probably not going to spend 10 grand on a podcast studio, but once a month as part of our retainer, we can come in and do a podcast. It's safe. We'll clean up afterwards. It'll all be socially distanced, COVID friendly, all that sort of stuff. And that's something that's worked really, really well. We're actually meant to be doing one of the first major podcasts that we've got with a brand new client in about 45 minutes. So it just shows it is working. And it's cut down our costs on renting studio spaces and stuff as well. So we just looked at everything a bit differently. Decided to focus on more than just the one thing that basically we got told we couldn't do in lockdown, which was go into people's offices and film or stuff like that. One of the things that's very frustrating, which I've spoke about before, is we had at one point a job, and the job just before lockdown was the biggest paying job we've ever had. And the only thing that we had to do was film Liverpool looking busy, and it was a lockdown. So we sadly couldn't get that job. But luckily enough, we've won it back after 2.5 years. We're getting to do it very soon. So yeah, it's been a really mad couple of years, and we've came out the other side probably in a better position, definitely in a better position than we went in.
I mean, that's incredible. Lol, I just laughed out loud at that story about Liverpool looking busy. Like the only time, and the only time it would ever happen would be when the world shuts down.
Exactly.
But that's incredible. And I mean, the podcast thing is so cool. It's just a way that you've obviously, you guys are creative for a living, and creating amazing content for people to consume and just kind of enjoy, but also kind of thinking outside the box and taking that space and thinking really like, how can we use it to our advantage? And I think lots of people, during the lockdown, lots of people did become podcast creators and decide to kind of share their thoughts. And, it's been madly successful. I'm a massive podcast fan myself. I know a lot of my friends and the people around me are, and I think people in general, it's just an amazing extra way to kind of, experience that. In terms of the future and stuff, I know you've done loads so far, and you've got so many exciting things in the mix, and that your book and your documentary coming out. What do you see the future of Culture City looking like?
I think one of the things that we're really, really, really looking at heavily at the moment is we've got an amazing office, we've got amazing clients in the building, and we know how we want to grow, and especially a lot of the clients that we have now, it's just about keeping hold of them, which we've never really lost a major client, so that's really good. And it's about what else we can offer them and what other interesting things we can do, and also keeping up with like trends and stuff. So we did a shoot recently for a client we've worked with for 5 years now, called Open Media, and it was with them and Nike, and it was showcasing the later when Liverpool had the parade outside our office, and something about that was just really stylized. It looked great. We knew the client really, really well, so mixing up like 8K cinema footage with like drone footage, and then also mixing it with like VHS, so it's got like that amazing like look, and just trying to push that like art direction side of it a bit more is something that we want to focus on, because the results are amazing, and we're really, really happy with that. And then also something that we're looking in at the moment, which we haven't found a location yet, or we've had a few talks, but we think in the next couple of years we'll be having our own much bigger studio space as well as the office. So for a perfect example, it might be a massive warehouse or something similar, where half of the room would be like a recording studio, and then the other half would be like an infinity curve, so we can do photography, just like basically a huge creative space that we can both rent out and use for our projects as well, which I think would be great.
I mean, that sounds amazing. I think there'd be so many different types of creators, you know, looking to get their hands on that. And I know, especially like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not, it's more common down in London or anything, but like really amazing spaces. Have everything that you're kind of looking for as a content creator. Maybe it's kind of difficult to find, you know, in places like the northwest of Liverpool, especially. I don't know, but you know, that all sounds amazing. And I'm just conscious of time now. But for people who are wanting to learn more about you guys, wanting to kind of keep up with you, watch the documentary, read the book, you know, even keep an eye out on your content space, where can people find you?
The best place to find us would probably be either our socials. So everything's either Culture City, or sometimes we've kept the original Culture City TV, just because I don't want to let it go and I love it too much. And then the website is www.culturecity.co.uk. Felt like I put too many W's in there then, but I'm very tired. So if I did, it's the normal one, www.
Just great. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it. Super exciting stuff that you guys are working on. We're excited to get this out there.
Amazing. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.